Calling the Master Plan Update Committee meeting to order of October 8th, 2020. Pursuant to the Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, Section 18, the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. The Town of Chelmsford Master Plan Update Committee will be conducting a remote public meeting on Thursday, October 8th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Town of Chelmsford is inviting you to a scheduled Zoom meeting, topic Master Plan Update. I think that's all I need to read. First thing on the agenda is open session. So I don't see anybody here, so I'm gonna skip over survey results. Fred, you're here. You wanna give us a quick update on anything, or you good?
Thanks, Judge. Let me just give you a quick update on the Age-Friendly Chelmsford Action Plan. I got comments from Evan. He sent me some specific comments on some of the domains and some general observations about the plan overall. I'll be working with the domain teams of the respective domains that are affected by the comments and work with them to address the comments and incorporate them into the plan.
Okay.
Thanks, Evan.
You're welcome. Hopefully they were helpful.
Very.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Next item on the agenda, I'm going to skip down to review of facilities updates because we have Gary Persichetti with us tonight. I know it was just emailed out today. I don't know if everybody has it in front of them. You guys have it in front of you? Bill, Scott, Joe?
Yep.
I'm just bringing it up right now. So.
Okay.
I've got it.
Okay. And Nancy's joining us, it looks like. So, Gary, you want to quickly go through it, or? Can't hear you, Gary.
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Okay, I'm sorry. The update of the facilities plan, I'd say I'm about 75% through it. The introduction section is done. The big changes, of course, is in the budget figures. They're all up to date on the 1, 2, 3, third paragraph down, which gives you the breakdown of through property taxes and all the funding. Then you go from there into the introduction to the facilities. So all the town buildings are in there. In the schools, they've all been updated. The only thing I know that from looking at it right now is when you hit town offices, I'm in the process of a study right now of redoing the restrooms. So that'll make it to a capital plan soon. But so it's not on here yet because we haven't gotten to put a year on it and a full budget figure. But all the rest of them are showing the changes, as for instance, the North Town Hall and the Center for the Arts were in the last plan just ready to go out for the money. Of course, they're all built and done at this point in time. The new Center Fire Station is all listed. The North Fire is listed with the 3.4 million that we're going to be going for on a week from Monday night. I'm sorry. So all of that's been updated right on through libraries. Then you go through the schools. So actually, I'm flying through unless you want to stop and look at anything you want to particularly read. But I'm taking you through the school administration, the senior center. All of those have been updated, all the way through the fields, and then you come to the school fields, which are also updated. So when you turn to the one that says management and operations, and then it says public facilities, I need to redo that whole top section that says, over the past decade, the department, that's the old. I have not had a chance to redo that, so I will. Then when you flip another page or two forward, you come to the Greens Community. It's completed energy projects. Had a little trouble with that chart, so that one's almost prepared, but you are looking at the last 10 years, not the new 10 years. That'll be put right in there. And then the charts on the next page are new, and so is all the verbiage of the EV, the MVP grant stuff, all the solar, all of that is up to date. The issues and opportunities. So then that leaves me moving on 2 more pages in. And you come to the schools, it says schools. Basically what that is, I have to extract all I put into each one of those schools into this, which is basically a summary. And that is not done. So I have to, because it talks about the 31 million, which is all done. So I'll get that done. And then you continue on with the stuff that is real, the planned energy, and then under capital planning, I have to do the section where it starts with although the annual appropriation. And that's it. Everything else should be done and staying with the format that you have been using. I will sections and get them through, and in the meantime, if you guys are reviewing it and have comments, feel free to send them on over.
Gary, I just have a question.
Sure.
On page 20, where it talks about the 31 million project, it says it was funded with a debt exemption. Didn't we get some monies back from the SBA?
Yes, we did. We ended up getting, I believe it was around 56.4%.
Yeah.
And there were some items which everyone knows, because we went to town meeting to turn which would have been a 600-seat auditorium, because it's all MSBA would pay for. The town elected to go the 1,000-seat anyway, knowing that the other 400 seats would bring in no money at all, out of that. So yeah, we do have that figure. I can add that in. I could shorten that up to just talk about it and talk about the fact that we did get MSBA reimbursement and put in the amount that we got.
Yeah.
And then I'll move into the new stuff.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I'll make that note on here right now. All right. No problem with that.
And the only other thing that I saw was on recommendations for facilities.
Yep.
The second to last one says consider increasing, looks like a blank dollar amount, million annual capital improvement.
Well, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. And if I could take you back a few pages to where I also reached out to John Souza on the capital. Let me find it quickly. And the reason why I want to do that is because
Probably page 20 to 22, maybe, capital planning.
there's been some great growth over the years that that John was able to institute for us, because for the longest time, we never exceeded that 2.5 million. That was the capital locked in no matter what we do.
That's page 22, I think.
Yeah, so he's up here in the very last paragraph. He says here, the review currently performed within the context of the target is approximately 3.2 million per year as determined by the town 5-year plan. So in 2012, we increased from 2.5 to 2.6. 13 went up to 2.9. During 16 to 19, it ran between 3.2 and 3.3. Okay, and then 2020 capital was for 3.4 million. And then the seeking of the COVID had changed it. Now we're going to try to put some back. So And then he writes here, 22 is expected to be approximately 3.6 to 3.8. So I would say likely I could probably run around that number. I'll check with John for that back page.
Okay.
I think it's a
I wasn't
quite
sure
good
if we
number.
should, I wasn't sure if we should just leave it open and say that additional funding to maintain pace with the capital projects,
Yep, we could do that.
leave it
Additional
open.
funding needed. Yeah, that's a good idea too.
So,
I'll write that down now.
because then you don't block yourself into a figure,
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
So again, I mean, when you have 29 buildings and all the fields and everything, I just have to say that it's a great community to be able to continue to raise that fee, and let us spend that more money to get the capital done. And then, of course, with Paul's success of, bringing in money at the end of the year and taking a couple of projects and doing them with that money, like the $550,000 for the front of the high school, which by the end of next week will be 100% totally complete. And he's done that with about 5 or 6 other projects. So, I mean, you add that stuff on top of what we're spending between capital and some debt exemption stuff. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. All right. Go around the board. Does anybody have any questions for Gary?
Nothing from Murphy.
Yeah, I don't have any, George.
Okay, Joe?
My only question is that energy project that we did for the town, for the schools through Johnson Controls.
Yeah, the 31 million? I mean,
Yeah,
the 18.
18
yeah.
million.
How many
Yep.
years is that? Was it like 20 years or what was
It's a 20-year. Yep.
Okay. Is that something we should be projecting out to try to be, I don't know, like looking for another long-term deal like that in the future, or have they offered any services like that?
We've reached out for some smaller projects to look into. As a matter of fact, I've been working right now behind the scenes to do something with the chiller plant itself over at the forum, for the ice skating rink. So they've been one of the members that's looking at it with a couple others. We did the ice in the dashes a few years ago. The roof's been done. But the plant itself, there's 2 cat motors in there that are so old, there's only one mechanic left that works on them. So
Yeah.
we're in the process of looking at that kind of stuff. But to better answer your question, Joe, first of all,
I'm just thinking where we're thinking 10 years out.
I
stuff
agree,
gonna
because
become obsolete.
I'll tell you how it came about, Joe, from the Energy Conservation Committee at the time. Was we were hitting a wall with all big projects, univents in pretty much every school, ranging from about 350,000 to about 900,000 in the high school. And when you started to stack that up with all the other capital concerns that were coming across the board from police, fire, needing a DPW, needing a new central fire station, all of that stuff, we just couldn't find a way to do it. So we put out a bid and we asked for all those certain items to come off of it. So it was somewhere around, if I recall, somewhere around 5.5 million. So our ESCO, instead of bringing in the average of about 18 to maybe 22 people that bid it, we only had 4 because we didn't leave them any low-hanging fruit. So what really pushed it over the edge and gave us the ability to do it was the 2.4 megawatts of solar that we put between the 8 schools, the 1 ground mount, and the DPW. And the Cadillac to that was, we wanted to, at the end of the day, AC the town offices because we had all those window units. We were, messing up the power requirements. And that's when the ground mount came into play at Harrington. Technically, that paid for the millions of dollars it cost to do that. So, Joe, I would think the smartest thing, again, would be to take another look. But the one thing you got to be cautious about is if you cannot give them enough of a savings to share back and forth, then it's not lucrative for anyone. We're going into year 5. At the end of year 5, no one has written a check. In other words, they have to write us a check. They didn't save what they said they would, and they have every time. And for the town's part, we have exceeded twice on 2 line items the figures that we have agreed to. And in all honesty, both of those figures were in the school department based on heating, and that all had to do with the couple of years ago with the teachers union. So we were starting units up earlier than we had originally, had talked about. We raised some temperatures up, but yet again, at the end of all of those years, we still received the check. So we have not expensed a dollar itself, other than, we paid a loan back with the money we're getting and a little bit of some. So I mean,
That's awesome.
yeah, I will take a look at it again. I'm not sure, but we can certainly have some conversations because we'll be going into year 6. We're almost through year 6. So
One other quick question I have is in regards to the DPW facility itself. I know you guys are doing a build out, or you probably already did it for the stormwater. Are there any other areas that you guys need to complete in that building, or are there other future projects that you guys anticipate over the next 10 years?
Yeah, I have it on the list here. The only thing left to do now is the fueling island at $1.3 million. The fueling island has been asked for by all 3 departments, meaning the police department, fire department, and DPW. We'd love to see it serve similar in a way like the salt shed does, by having one behind us and one still up at Swain Road, where the luxury of a cruiser or a fire truck or whatever that's on this side of town just comes here to fuel up instead of there. And as you know, we spent quite a bit of sum of money, I think 2 years ago now, at the police station to redo the entire concrete around the pumps because of the extra heavy between some of my large trucks and of course the fire trucks, and the fact that that area was really not built originally, to do that, because that started out no diesel at all. That was done, I believe, still at Richardson Road at that time. So, and that would do it. As you know, the first thing we did with the building when we first purchased it, before we came for the rest of the money, was put a roof on it. So I don't really see, we've finished all the interior renovations. We're finishing the interior wash bay. To answer, the only other way to answer that is we did have a chip near for about $900,000 for a automated wash bay, but we're not doing that. We've gotten as much negative feedback as positive. That's why we put it within the building and manually do it.
That's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate the update.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Nancy, you all set? I'm going to assume Nancy.
I am.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Gary, thank you. That's a lot of work in a short period of time, and
Yeah.
we appreciate it. I would say to the board members, read through it over the next week or so. If you have any comments, email them over to Evan, and Evan will get them over to Gary. Evan, do you have any comments on this?
Nothing specific. I guess my question to Gary would be, looking back over the last 10 years, how have you or the DPW or the town actually used this chapter? Does it serve simply as a history book for you, or are you able to reference it when you're in front of FinCom, or you're in, at town meeting, or you submit a capital request? Just trying to gauge the value of this particular section to your department in particular.
Sure. I'll answer that the best way I can, which is, that's a great point. I wish I have utilized it better than I have for those types of things. And I think one of the reasons why it doesn't get utilized as much is because we carry a 5-year and 10-year capital plan between the town and the schools. And that seems to be the most thing people are looking for, because the one thing they hate to see is an item that wasn't on there for any length of time. For instance, that time at the high school where we had to redo the English language lab. It took a little heat that year because it hadn't been on like for the last 3 years or on the capital plan. So, but your comment is extremely well, and I think we should be pulling it out more and using it for those types of things because they all come together. That's how it's made up. So it makes sense. Thank you.
Well, my final comment would be when you finish drafting it for the committee's approval, I would customize it so that you and your department and others are able to leverage it. Maybe a little bit better than we have in the past decade.
Yeah.
That's all I have, George. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Gary, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You guys have a wonderful evening.
So, we should move over. Evan, you want to go to economic development or land use and zoning section? Can't hear you, Evan. Evan, you're muted.
I'm just going to email land use and zoning to Lisa. That way she can put it up.
Okay.
Just give me a moment here. Okay, that's been sent.
Okay. Let's see. All right. I've got it here. Opening the file.
So, George, I believe tonight we're focusing on issues and opportunities and recommendations.
Yep.
All right. So, Lisa, if you could scroll to the page 32.
This is the page. This file is 16 pages long.
Let's scroll to the end. Let's see what it looks like.
This is the last page.
And you go up to a couple of pages. You'll see issues. Yep. One more. Yep,
I
right here.
guess my computer
You
is
got
still
it. You got
loading.
it. You got
Yeah,
it.
right here. Okay.
A little bit further.
Keep going.
Yep.
Right here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so this version is what NIMCOG sent out for your last meeting. And I think the committee's task was to review issues and opportunities. This is for a rewrite for the update 2020 to 2030. So at the last meeting, I believe Beverly and Jay walked the committee through this. But I think tonight's exercise was to try to have some high-level discussion to indicate committee's, I guess, acceptance or rejection or needs further work, as well as identify any new issues and opportunities.
Okay. So do we just want to take it paragraph by paragraph, or how do we want to do it?
I would go to the recommendations because as the committee recalls, the issues and opportunities and recommendations are fairly repetitive. I would jump to recommendations, and then if we need to delve into the recommendation deeper, we can go back to the body of issues and opportunities.
Okay. So the first recommendation is investigate whether a more formal design review process would benefit the town in the future. Anyone have any problem with that, or?
Yeah, I'd kind of like to be absolutely sure is that a design review of large projects? Or just, what are the,
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means.
yeah,
Okay.
In the body of issues and opportunities, it's a carryover from the 2010 recommendation, which did recommend the notion of a standalone design review committee. What the planning board decided to do was create architectural design guidelines and wrap them into the overlays. So I've mentioned that to this committee. My understanding or my interpretation or my read on the planning board is that they would likely want to retain their leverage and negotiation as part of their special permit process via the overlays and the design guidelines. However, I would say that maybe the planning board, upon a review and discussion, would feel as though the design guidelines themselves need some refinement or improvement. It's not very often where the board refers to them. On the other hand, I think recently the board hasn't really had to get into an architectural debate like it did with the CVS, where they came in with, south of Arizona architecture.
yeah.
So, I don't think the board or the town wants to create an independent design review committee. So, I'm not sure formal or more formal is the proper recommendation here.
No,
I guess, yep.
yeah.
I think it's good to hear from some planning board members.
Yeah, I think at this point, it would be good to take a second look at those design guidelines to begin with before we try pushing them into any application. Because, I don't know, I just have a real hard time trying to shoehorn some of these projects into those particular guidelines. But at the same time, I am comfortable with using them only in the overlays.
Yeah, well, I think if we don't say that kind of explicitly, I mean, we understand where they apply and where they don't. But it might be worth mentioning here because some people are going to get their hackles up over the notion of anybody telling them, what color to paint their house. And that's not what this is, but people may perceive it that way. So we need to be a little careful. If they even read the master plan at all.
Yeah, and I think that there's an opportunity to tweak the wording of the overlays so that it more succinctly ties in the design guidelines. Because I think they're so loosely tied to it that we have no leverage for them.
So I think we're getting two things here, and that is, yes, you have some design guidelines in the overlay, but remember the master plan is more of a high level. And if you want to get nitty gritty, then you got to do it on the planning board level.
Right.
Yeah.
This level, I think saying it the way we got it here is that it brings it to the forefront that the planning board should either create a standalone committee to review design guidelines, and so that we don't have the situation we had with CVS, which was a stucco box, box with stucco on it. And there was an issue up here in Drum Hill way before Evan, and I remember it was before me on the planning board, with the building right by the hotel here on Technology Drive. They came in with a California look, and the planning board was trying to get brick and mortar and different look. So I think having this in here as a general recommendation, and the nitty gritty needs to go down to the planning board level, saying maybe you should look at this further and in depth, either in your overlays or just have a standing committee. So when someone comes into town before they hit the planning board, has an opportunity to go in and talk about design of the building. But
Okay.
George, I'm good with everything you're saying, although I would kind of like to tweak the wording of this so it's more explicit and say investigate whether a more formal commercial and industrial design requirements would benefit the town in the future. I don't want anybody to interpret it against residential to begin with. And what we're really talking about here is, do we need to make them required as opposed to just nebulous? You know, and right now they're kind of nebulous.
I don't have a problem making it just for a commercial industrial application.
Yeah, just
That's
that'll stop questions.
Yeah, I think that in itself would,
It also applies to multifamily.
okay.
Yeah, technically, you're right. It
Yeah.
does.
Yep.
It does.
Single and two family don't go in front of the planning board.
That's right.
So with the, sure, I have no problem with any of that. That they calling out for commercial, industrial, and multifamily, or just say commercial, industrial, and then leave multifamily out of it if you want. Because any big projects coming in is probably coming in under CEIOD or or an overlay situation anyway. So, I think is my statement correct under that, Evan? That any large multifamily might be coming in would be under CIOD or an overlay.
Yep.
Has been so far.
Yeah. So I have no problem putting the words commercial industrial in there. Evan, you want to work those in?
Yep.
Okay. The next one is in late 2021, review and impact, section 105-8, revisions implemented 2019 to determine whether the revisions adequately address development issues within the Westlands, the Hat Pond, Freeman Lake neighborhoods, or zoning revisions continue to be needed.
Hey, George?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know you were moving on so quick.
Okay.
Where you're making the 2010 master plan, it's over the last 10 years, has there been a problem because we don't have a formal design review? But it kind of reads like, hey, we recommended this 10 years ago and you still haven't done it.
I don't think there's been a problem other than there was a couple instances that took a little bit of planning board ingenuity to help bring a project in nicer than when it started. So for instance, the CVS in the center of town was literally a flat roof, 4 walls, rectangular in shape with stucco on it.
It was right out of Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh, and the, I want to say Stedman Street, the proposed storage building up there, that was this humongous 4-story brick wall, along with nothing else on it, for what, 200 feet?
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Might have been
it
nice
was
for
just,
projecting movies at night.
yeah.
You know?
I mean, yes, we have had challenges, and I think that we came out of all of them much better than we could have. I mean, it could have gone really badly, but the reality is that we don't have a lot of leverage. I mean, it's all negotiation, and there's just no leverage there.
Well, just the way it reads to me seems to be a negative, like we should have done something 10 years ago and we're going to recommend it again.
But the issues and opportunities section does indicate that in 2013, design guidelines were adopted. So again, in the body, it acknowledges that progress was made. I believe that the planning board is likely satisfied if they needed to rely on the design guidelines as part of a special permit process, in order to leverage better architecture. I believe they're in that position. As you're hearing board members say, it hasn't been as much of an issue recently. I guess what NIMCOG is suggesting is that they're currently they're guidelines, they're not standards. So NIMCOG is suggesting that in the spirit of the 2010 master plan, the board should investigate whether those should evolve from guidelines to standards. That's a worthy conversation for the planning board to have. So, you know, I think to put it into context, Scott, the body acknowledges that progress has been made, just not 100% in the spirit and intent of the original 2010 recommendation.
So to Scott's comment, I think this could be modified to investigate whether the guidelines that were put in place are adequate or if more needs to be done.
So
Or
planning
if a
board,
more formal design review would benefit the town.
so planning board to review for improvements.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is simply allow it to acknowledge that we took a step forward and we need to evaluate if it was enough.
All right, thank you, George.
Okay,
So on the second bullet, my only comment is that the revision to 195.8 is not just specific to the Westlands, Hart Pond, and
Right.
Freeman Lake
That's
neighborhoods. It's townwide on any pre-existing non-conforming structure. So I can work with NIMCOG to update that.
so that should be 195-8, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
townwide.
For the new members that aren't planning board members, I guess we should tell them or point out what 195-8 is. So it has to do with non-conforming uses and structures. I think that was partially changed, right, Evan?
Yeah, this only applies to single and two family pre-existing non-conforming structures. And it applies the setbacks based upon the date the structure was built. And essentially the theory here was twofold. One was that many of the pre-existing non-conforming neighborhoods, such as the Westlands, if someone wanted to put an addition on their house, they found themselves automatically going to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is somewhat costly. And 99% of those applications were being approved without any neighborhood opposition or concerns. The second reason was that most of those additions, and again, if you look at the Westlands, even though many of those houses have had additions put on them since they were built, most of those additions, scope, scale, and massing have been consistent with the neighborhood. They haven't been out of place. So that was the thought process with this recent bylaw modification. So far, it's been well received. We haven't had any blow-ups yet. We as with any new zoning bylaw, we are coming across some unintended consequences. They're not drastic in nature, but they weren't necessarily the primary intent. And that's to be expected with any type of zoning bylaw.
Okay. Move on to the next one. Or do I hear any other questions? Consider modifying CIOD so that it applies to all mill properties, including those that are industrially zoned, or work toward establishing mill reuse overlay district and bylaw to provide greater flexibility in reusing or redeveloping existing structures. So for me, the mill properties really are in North Chelmsford and mostly, Evan, or is there any
Yes.
other ones?
Nope, they're all north.
So I don't know if I would fly with that recommendation. Maybe it's something that to meet with the mill owners and talk to them and see what what they are facing for challenges, and whether the zoning should be, an overlay should be revisited to help them fill their spaces. But I think the mills are pretty full as far as I know.
Yeah, we had talked about this at a previous meeting. The mill, which is across the street from the establishment mill, that owner has recently reached out to Lisa and I. She's experiencing, over the last couple of years, she's experienced increased vacancy. So she's asked us, is residential an option for her? And not to your surprise, that structure is pre-existing non-conforming, which would allow her the legal ability to apply to the planning board to convert portions of that mill to residential without a formal COI designation or a mill reuse overlay designation. But there's certainly, you know, if the town were amenable, the planning board were amenable to converting existing commercial mill space to residential, obviously having it officially as part of a COI or a mill reuse overlay is a preferred zoning option than coming in under 195(8). But I do agree with you, George. Since there's only been one mill owner exploring the issue, I think the best place to start is a conversation to really understand what are the challenges with these mill owners moving forward over the next 10 years.
Well, maybe that's how that sentence should start out, is to have a discussion with the mill owners to see what challenges they face and whether adding an overlay, whether it be the COI or a mill reuse overlay district, would help them in maximizing the mill spaces. What do you think?
Makes sense
Nancy,
to me.
Mike, Scott, Bill?
I agree with you, George.
I'm good.
All right. Nancy and Mike, you're planning board members, so,
Yeah,
you know, the conversation, it starts with the conversation. And we have the people in town that can do that, so,
so let's do it.
okay. Continue to monitor the Lowell and Nashville Manchester Commuter Rail Extension Project in the position the community to take advantage of transit-oriented development opportunities should the project go forward. That's pretty straightforward. It's one of the slow trains from China, so.
Yeah.
This did come up at last night's North Village Vinyl Square Committee meeting. If I understand the update correctly, it was provided by Bill Gillette. He's been in communication with Representative Golden. And it appears as though New Hampshire, Nashua in particular, has a standing committee that has members within high-ranking government officials at the state level and the local level. So at least as far as New Hampshire is concerned, they're much more, I guess, advanced in their process than they were 10 years ago. The only other item of interest that Bill mentioned was that the city of Lowell appears to be at the table. I think as far as the town of Chelmsford is concerned, continuing to monitor, I think, is good, but we may want to consider taking this a step further and saying that a representative from the town of Chelmsford should at a minimum follow the proceedings, or better yet, try to get a seat at the table.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I will also just editorially say that while the 2010 master plan appears to say it's supportive of the concept based upon certain mitigating circumstances, there are members of the North Village Committee who are don't share the same conceptual support at this point. Not totally surprising, but it's an issue that I'm not sure has ever been in front of the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen, certainly not within recent incarnations of the board. So the notion that the town would send a representative or try to get a representative on a committee to engage, that unfortunately may be viewed as a de facto item, that the town supports it. So I think it's worthwhile putting it as a condition, maybe tie it to the Board of Selectmen should consider, and let them figure it out.
The other thing too is in 2010 in the master plan, there was several discussions about the rail and whether it should be a stop in Chelmsford and where would it be. One of the stops would be end of Wooten Street. But then there was the issue of traffic into Vinyl Square, and that North Village didn't want to see any more traffic through that square. And then, they say, what about further on down? Where would that be and where would the parking be? So there's some people on both sides of the fence here, whether it should stop in Chelmsford or shouldn't stop in Chelmsford. So, and those were some long discussions that we had in 2010. So, continue to monitor, and maybe it is to put on the selectmen to follow what's going on with the New Hampshire representatives. So, anybody else on that one?
I was pretty excited about it back in the day, but the problem is that because you have to cross state lines and you got to get multiple different governments and, municipalities to agree on things, it's just everybody seems so discouraged about how to even make that happen. I think it's just people not having a good roadmap as to how to get it from one to another without it just kind of falling apart at just a conversation.
I think part of the issue was a section of track in New Hampshire was owned by an individual or some company, and that was the hang-up. That was one of the hang-ups in the whole thing back 10 years ago. But I think that's all been worked out. So, all right. I guess we're moving on to the next one. Determine whether rezoning of Route 40 from Route 3 to
Right.
Westwood Town Lounge should be revisited in order to eliminate use conflicts between residential and commercial industrial uses. Well,
Just to put it into context, I'll just read a couple sentences from the issues and opportunities. And again, this is NIMCOG's perspective. It gives the update. The Route 40 Study Committee was formed, undertook significant, lengthy, involved process that were ultimately defeated at 2019 town meeting. It says, therefore, this issue remains unresolved. It says the planning board will need to revisit this issue in order to determine whether transitional zoning should still be pursued for this area.
I'd give it a thumbs down.
So you're suggesting just remove it entirely and say that the issue is, that no action is contemplated, basically.
I'm
that's
not
essentially.
seeing it, guys.
Yeah, I agree. That's essentially, I think, the
I'm
status
just
of
not
this.
seeing it.
I don't think there's any board or committee interested to revisit it. And even if there were, I'm not sure it would be a worthwhile time.
I'm not sure that you could get a citizens committee to have any interest in participating at this point after the way the last one was treated.
Agreed.
So you want to eliminate this altogether? Or do we want to talk about in general to look at potential land use conflicts in residential and commercial areas?
You can do that.
Just make it a
Yeah.
general statement.
Yeah, generalize it. Don't make it specific to Route 40 and Route 3. I mean, basically determine whether rezoning, that's already been done, and the answer was no. I mean, that
It was
determination's been
bombarded,
made. Yeah, it was
period.
bombarded, so.
So maybe it should just say determine whether whether rezoning should be revisited in order to eliminate land use conflicts between residential and commercial industrial uses or something to that
Yeah,
effect.
yeah, I think if we
That's
just
fine.
leave out Route 40 and Route 3, I think you're okay. And then if the matter opens up again, you have a basis on which to hang your
I'd like to see this expanded to capture the planning board. I had mentioned this at the previous committee meeting. The planning board has talked about looking at the zoning map to try to address blatant conflicts between what's on the ground
yeah.
and what's on the zoning map.
Yeah.
We've wanted to do this for 10 years.
So,
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
think what we're saying is basically the same thing.
Do it townwide.
Do it
Yeah.
townwide, just
Just
a
do it
general
townwide.
statement, general
Exactly.
statement to eliminate land use conflicts,
Yeah.
between residential, commercial, industrial uses as
Between
well
the
as
zoning map and what's
zoning
actually
map
on the
and
ground.
what's on the ground.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
The only thing I want to say about that though is as we add residential into commercial industrial areas, I feel like we add more conflict zones as a result of doing that. So, I mean, I don't know how that gets put in here.
No, you're dead right, Joe.
You're right, Joe. And the funny thing is that those are conflict zones. Those are things that we consider conflict zones, and yet the people that want to live there, that's what they want to live in. So it's an odd, odd situation.
The one situation I was thinking about was
Because it's something
Hillside Gardens off of
demand for.
110. Tony Del Papa had his electrical company there for years, and their trucks would start up at I want to say 6:30 in the morning without an issue. And then once that whole condo development went in there, all of a sudden there was problems with Kidder Road and all that stuff. So, unfortunately, it's kind of like a Pandora's box, I feel like.
Yeah, that particular project was a 40B. So even if that project had come in under a COID overlay, I'm pretty certain the planning board would have approved something very different.
Yeah, that's probably right.
That's an excellent point.
I think the same thing on Mill Road, that one that went up, that's up on the top of the mountain there, on the top of the hill. There's
Yeah.
businesses next door, and I think there was a concern with the Board of Health and that development. But that was, again, a 40B. So, but I think if you generalize it, I think we come with some language that, the planning board to look at land use conflicts, what's on the ground, what's on the zoning map, between residential, commercial. I think it'd be just a general thing for the planning board to continue to review or review it.
Yeah.
So George, who's going to rewrite that to make it what you want to do?
I'll
think,
work with NIMCOG.
Or you can work with me if you want, Evan, on
Yep.
that, and then we'll get it to the board, and then we'll get over to NEMCOG, or
Okay.
get it to NEMCOG. Okay. The town should revisit its zoning bylaw to accommodate pop-up stores, e-commerce, fulfillment centers, ghost dark stores to address shifting markets for brick and mortar retail and office space.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone good with that one?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Determine whether affordability requirement with an inclusionary housing bylaw should be reduced now that the town has achieved 10% subsidized housing inventory goal.
How about modified instead of reduced?
about why change it at all. So, okay, I'll buy modify. So, modify. We're all good with that change?
Yeah.
Yes.
Review the in-law apartment regulations, determine whether additional changes could be made to allow ADUs and freestanding structures such as detached barn or garage as is allowed in other communities. In addition, the requirement that occupants be related to the owner should be reconsidered. I'm against this. So I just think it opens up to become a multifamily situation. It becomes 2 units, multifamily. Right now, as an in-law apartment, it's registered at the Registry of Deeds. It's limited to blood relatives, basically, and I think that's the way it should be. And then if that relative goes away, then it becomes part of the house, and it stays in typical single-family neighborhood. If it's opened up to everybody, it becomes a 2-family.
Yeah.
So,
George, I would be okay with this if it was modified to eliminate the last sentence, which opens it up to everybody. And if the detached barn or garage was modified to say an existing detached barn or garage, so that you're not creating a new structure.
I understand. I think definitely taking out the last sentence is critical. As far as being detached, I'm still against it because then it really doesn't become part of the house. So, you know,
I do see it.
you know, we did change the in-law apartment regulations. We increased the size of it. We also, and as part of, matter of fact, Joe Reddy, your dad brought it up, that when it was an in-law apartment, and let's say the in-law or the relative passes away, then it becomes part of the house, and the family wants to sell the house, then the buyers have to start all over again to get approval of the in-law apartment. That was the old rule. Now all they have to do is go in, fill out some paperwork, and it's done. It automatically comes back in as an in-law apartment. There's no need to go back before all the boards for approvals and whatever else. So
I don't see an issue though with pre-existing non-attached structures becoming in-laws though. Because if you go down Billerica Road, there's actually a couple of them that I think have been converted over, and you wouldn't know the difference, to be honest with you.
Okay.
My take on this is, I agree for the here and now. Detached accessory dwelling units are likely problematic. However, and this will likely be brought up in the housing section, as the town ages and age-friendly, where people want to age in their house or on their property or on their homestead, and the town continues to struggle with accommodating new construction for housing opportunities, granny pods and tiny houses are going to increasingly come to Chelmsford, whether we like it or not, just for economic reasons. So I'm not suggesting that, again, right here, right now, we need to or should accept it, but I think a 10-year look out based upon age-friendly. If you look at the survey as well, your master plan survey, I think it's question 11. There's a over 50% rate affordable housing, senior housing, and housing opportunities as very important and extremely important. So, maybe if it's for Chelmsford residents and by Chelmsford residents, and it's a granny pod or a tiny house, my hesitancy is I don't think we can. I wouldn't feel comfortable completely closing the door on it as part of a master plan. I'm not
Okay.
suggesting that the master plan support the concept, but I think we need to acknowledge that our zoning bylaw currently bans this opportunity. And over the next 10 years, we may need to be more open to it.
I think
So
it
I
hurts
have-
historic housing. Sorry, I don't mean to overtalk. I think it hurts historic housing if you don't support it, because a lot of these things are older, like 1800 homes with barns and things that are going to be converted. Otherwise, people just knock them down and then they do something new. Versus we embrace doing, huge, large scale developments. I would rather see people do these kind of developments than do, a huge 168 unit, CEIOD project.
I have a proposed change then. Review the in-law apartment regulations, to determine whether additional changes could be made to allow ADUs in existing freestanding structures such as a detached barn or garage, period. And leave it at
For
that.
that, George.
Huh?
It's good.
Scott and Bill?
Sure, I think so. The one thing I think about is where I used to live in San Jose. They had a tenant kind of rule, so you could rent a room in your house up to a maximum of 3 tenants, up to a maximum of 6 people in a home. And the reason they did this was because of health and safety reasons, and also parking. And I've talked to several people that have had some of these things all over the country. And the biggest headache people have with these ADUs are cars, not houses and not people, but cars. And I don't know how you deal with that, because you literally can end up having 8, 9, 10 cars in one house. And I think in North Chelmsford, it's where the housing is a little more dense, that could end up being a real problem. And I don't know whether you've experienced that or not. And if you don't say existing structures, then people will build, and then it will change, and maybe for the better, but it will definitely change the flavor of the neighborhood. I'm done.
Okay. So
I like limiting it to existing structures of a certain time period. That way you don't get people trying to build a secondary structure. I completely agree with that.
Okay. So basically,
And I think existing structures is a place to start, because I do think that as time goes by, the granny pods are going to be in very high demand.
well, by saying existing freestanding structures such as a detached barn or garage, I think is pretty clear, and it sends a message. Then it's up to the planning board to see if they want to expand that onto the granny pods or whatever else. So,
Yeah.
But-
But I think that this is a good place to start.
good deal. We'll move to the next one.
George, the only thing that maybe we could consider is I'm thinking maybe the blood relationship there might be room, an opportunity for allowing 2 senior citizens to share a home with less expenses, as opposed to the blood requirement for a one-time exception.
Yeah, that I don't know. I don't know if you can make it age restricted. So
Yeah,
I don't know if that becomes a legal
Just
issue.
You know, what just came to mind was a need for senior housing, affordability, and sharing expenses.
Well, I can
Otherwise,
tell
I'm
you from a guy that just did it in his house, and I have my father living with us now. So it's worked out well for us. And, you know, it gives him his space. And, you know, it's small, but it's enough for him. And he's 81. So,
Scott, we do allow, the current bylaw allows for caretakers to live in the ADU, kind of like an au pair suite. So it goes beyond blood. I think it's now, it says related. So it doesn't have to be by blood. It acknowledges the kind of the new definition of family. So you could have two elderly people where one of them's called the caretaker. You know, not necessarily a healthcare professional. And then the final comment is there's nothing preventing two unrelated elderly people to share a house. They would each have a bedroom and then they'd share their kitchen and bathing facilities. I think there are a variety of options. Maybe as part of housing section and age friendly, maybe we need to better articulate some of those kind of non-traditional zoning solutions that people may not think are available to them.
Okay. No, sounds good. I'm just thinking of the senior housing, affordable housing, short-term solution.
Let me ask Ms. Murphy one question. Is there an issue with student rentals in Chelmsford? I know UMass Lowell is largely a commuter school, but I think it's slowly changing, apocalypse aside. Is that something that is desirable or undesirable to have people rent ADUs or rooms in their house to college students?
well, I would say Chelmsford hasn't had a problem with it, but, you know, I don't know. I can't answer that.
All right. I mean, that's something, if you limited it to, I forget the age thing, you know, but senior citizens, then that would obviate that problem. Because, well, we all know, I've spent enough time in college towns in my life to know that, yeah, that's not fun.
Yeah.
We do, so we don't specifically mention college dormitories. So by default, those types of uses are prohibited. Back to your original comment, our zoning bylaw defines family as no more than 4 unrelated people. So technically, you know, 4 college students could rent the house, but you couldn't have more than 4 unrelated college students in one house. And Joe may know better. I don't believe it's a trend in Chelmsford.
All right, we'll move to the next one. Amend the development regulations to allow for low impact development as a means of managing stormwater, assisting community compliance with the EPA's 2016 MS4 permit for Massachusetts. I think we're kind of doing that now, right?
Yep. I would just say change the word allow. We currently don't prohibit it. We just don't mention it. But I think it's to encourage or require but we don't prohibit it right now.
So
allow to me is not the right word.
Encourage
to encourage.
Low impact development.
What was that?
I said, what exactly is low impact development?
It's essentially soft engineering. So as you know, on the planning board, primarily when you approve commercial or residential, it's a closed drainage system.
Yeah.
Low impact development is rain gardens, green swales.
Okay.
So instead of infiltrating, like the development next to me, instead of infiltrating the roof drains directly into a system in the ground, they basically have a swale and it drains into the swale and then it slowly seeps into the ground. So there's no tanks in the ground and the stormwater goes into the rain garden basically and just seeps into the ground. So, and it recharges on its own.
Yeah, right.
And that's, I think Lowell's done that in several spots when they're trying to separate the stormwater out. Because right now the stormwater was going in with the sewer and it's going in through Duck Island. So now that they've separated out, they go into low impact areas and recharge systems. And anyway, consider modifying the zoning bylaw to allow agriculture related activities such as farm, retail sales in residential districts, farm co-ops, community kitchens, farm to table restaurants, and food processing facilities up to certain size as a means of preserving agricultural lands and supporting agricultural economy. I think that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Any others? So those are the ones that NIMCOG has drafted based upon what they've heard the committee talk about. Can anyone think of any others, land use and zoning related issues, opportunities, recommendations?
No, agriculture itself is already allowed in residential areas. It's a permitted use.
But we have to understand the definition of agriculture.
Well, that's right. But
yeah.
yeah, but it is a permitted use. So I think these are appropriate because these are not addressed in our zoning bylaws.
Any other high level bullets?
So I like to see one here that basically says that the planning board continue to review all overlay districts every couple of years to determine the viability and whether they need to be updated or modified. So I like to see a timetable put on that.
Yeah.
Instead of just having them on the books and then not going back to revisit them. Now that, like the planning board has seen some CIOD projects, maybe it's time for them to go back and review every single project. I think it's like 4 or 5 of them, and determine if there's any changes and modifications that need to be made to that overlay. It's not just that overlay, but other overlays. And I think it's just a straight bullet point that every couple of years that they're reviewed by the planning board.
I think I can make a very similar argument for our regulations dealing with affordable housing.
George, I like it. Mike, I like it. But I think that I would take that even farther and say that all sections of the zoning bylaws should be reviewed at least on a 10-year cycle to evaluate the effectiveness of the regulations and whether or not they need changes. I mean, I think it really should go through a 10-year cycle review.
So that's the whole bylaw, and I think the planning board kind of does that. I think the planning board kind of does that on a running basis anyway.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the overlay districts.
I think we do that on a problem basis. I think we look at sections of it when we have problems with it, as opposed to looking at it systematically for effectiveness. And I think there's a whole lot to be said about having a systematic cycle, review cycle for it.
So I'm kind of focusing on the things that the board has passed the last 5 to 10 years, including the inclusionary. I think that's absolutely, something that the board needs to review, because as things change, I mean, we've met the 10%, right. Whether these, and then look at the overlay districts to see if they're working or not working as designed. I think that's important, because these are things that the town's using to develop areas. And I think we need to keep active with them. As far as the 10-year review, that's fine. That's what this process kind of does in a way too, is that we kind of look at it as a whole review in a way. But, you know, you could say that for sections like parking and landscape. When I first got on the board, I was like, maybe we should review the landscape. Everybody's applying for special permits in landscaping. And then an older member on the board said, no, let them come and ask for the special permit. Okay? And it gives us an opportunity to review that landscaping in depth and further. So that made sense to me. Let them come, let them ask as they're coming in for site plan review. But I think the overlay districts, because I know if I was on the board, I'd be pushing for a couple of changes right now, but I'm not. And
Yeah, you would.
huh?
I said, yeah, you would.
So I'm not on the board though. So
Okay, so
So-
George, what you're suggesting then is consider review of the effectiveness of the zoning bylaw changes that have been made in the last 10 years. Or review the effectiveness of the zoning bylaw changes that have been made in the last 10 years.
I'm talking overlay districts and inclusionary zoning.
Yeah,
Yeah, all
Yeah.
right.
that's what it is.
So
Okay.
every 2 years and determine if any changes need to be made,
Yeah.
if any
Go.
updates need to be made. Evan, you okay with that? I can't hear you.
Evan, you're on mute.
I think the planning board's already talked about revisiting
Yeah,
ways in inclusionary. You know, they haven't defined a scope and scale, but they know it's time to go back and look at them.
I think that's correct.
All right. So then it
Wanna
won't
move-
hurt being in here.
No, it won't hurt at all.
Want to move on to economic development?
Sure.
Okay. Lisa, I sent that to you. Could you bring that one up?
Um,
All right, same deal. Scroll to the end. Recommendations.
Evan, is this the one that you made some edits in
Yes,
red?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, right here. Okay. So this section's a little bit different. As you may recall, NIMCOG has not submitted a draft of 2020 recommendations. So what you see in front of you are the 2010 recommendations with my updates. So based upon this evening, we'll be able to report back to NIMCOG as to how they should draft the 2020 recommendations. Similar to the land use and zoning, some of them were carried over, as we just reviewed. Some of them you just tweaked. Others you said we're done. So that's kind of the exercise for economic development at this point. You want to we'll go through them again?
Yep. Let me get back there. I just lost it on my computer. So the first one was support efforts of the Chelmsford Economic Development Commission and recruiting, retaining, expanding business community, tie together the efforts of CCD, DC, and the Community Development Department to update, maintain site finder database, update the annual survey of Chelmsford business community. A full-time director of business development was hired in 2017. I think that's pretty straightforward. We keep,
Yeah, it's fine as it is.
and just note in there that it's, director has been hired. And then, which will go back, Lisa sent over a one-page sheet with some thoughts as well. Next item, build upon the Chelmsford brand strategy developed by CDC in April 2010 by incorporating it within the regional brand strategy being developed in Route 3. Route 128, 495, work with the state economic development agencies to promote and adopt brand strategy for Route 3. Evan's comment, not certain about any regional brand strategy. EDC and BDD have focused efforts on creating a Route 129 brand marketing strategy. Lisa references strategies provided by Kimon Associates regarding Chelmsford Crossroads at Route 129 Business Park. So she makes a note in there about some branding of that area. Lisa, if you want to jump in at any time, you can jump in as well.
Sure. I think some of you may recall that the town had the fortunate opportunity of a site readiness grant award. That was an application that Evan wrote, and we were awarded those funds right upon my hiring. So that allowed an in-depth study of the crossroads, and from that provided recommendations on how to create this area as a competitive destination where businesses, want to locate, and a business attraction package. So those are some of the recommendations that I included in my briefing. That was Camoin Associates is an economic development strategist firm, as well as, wraparound services for lead generation and business attraction. So some of those items that I put in my briefing is something that kind of developed with Camoin as a way to brand and create an identity for the crossroads, and a way to, we all have empty office buildings in this corridor here. But how does Chelmsford how do we set ourselves apart differently from the others? And we've begun trying to do that through branding, identity. What do we want to be known for in that park? Mostly what's coming forward is a lot of advanced technology. So we're looking on ways to maximize the credibility of the area by sharing who's already been in the park for a long time. As a way to attract other similar industries.
So what will happen is NIMCOG will incorporate Lisa's briefing into the updated issues and opportunities, which will then be reflected in the new recommendations.
Okay. I lost my place. Next one was to adopt specific procedures, process for expedited permitting to ensure that the permitting decision, industrial, commercial. This is complete. This one's completed by a CIOD, NEMCOG, DLTA for permitting guide. So do we want to change that at all, or?
I'm not aware of any. I'm not aware of any planning board concerns with the CIOD expedited permitting. I want to believe that they like the applicability process. If that's the case, then I think the update should likely say that it's been well received. there hasn't been
I
any
think that's a fair
challenges.
statement. Yeah,
What's that?
that's a fair statement.
Yeah, and then, even though while the state defines expedited permitting as 180 days, as Mike and Nan know, the COID drops that down to 120 days. Really has never been a problem.
No,
And if the board needs an extension, the applicant grants one.
yeah,
So I think it's been well received. I'm not sure there's anything more we can do to expedite. I think we've taken that as far as we possibly can.
yeah.
So the recommendation would be is to continue with the expedited permitting processes through the CIOD and any other planning
Yep,
needs.
Yep.
So it's just a continue, recommendations continue with the expedited permit.
Sure.
Next one is extend the benefits of EDIP program to the entire community by expanding current economic target area through the establishment of regional technology center, work with local businesses to apply for recovery zone bonds from the Commonwealth, no longer required. So
If you recall, Jay had mentioned that the state revised the regulations, so this is no longer applicable. It'll likely just be deleted.
Yeah.
Okay. Prioritize redevelopment initiatives along 129 corridor on River Neck Road to the Borica Town Line in the Center Village, Vinyl Square, and Drum Hill area and Drum Hill Road. Vicinity is Glenview Sand and Gravel and along the Chelmsford Route 110 corridor between the Center Village and I-495. Completed via CI, Route 129 BAOD and CVOD, Center Village overlay. Any comments?
I'll jump in. I would just say that acknowledging the previous new recommendation under land use and zoning for the planning board to review these overlays. I'm assuming that the review, while it may tweak the overlays, would still keep the redevelopment concept in place. It may modify the mixed use component. If that's the case, I think we need to figure out in this master plan how we accelerate redevelopment. While the bylaws have been in place for 5 years at this point, redevelopment projects have been few and far between. I think we can kind of count them on our fingers. First one being Skips, the most recent one being 2129 Drum Hill. But it'd be good. I think the intent of the redevelopment overlay is to get more of it quicker.
Yeah.
Thoughts, Mike and Nan?
Yeah, I think that's true. The thing that we've really seen under the overlays is the increasing demand for housing and the desire to put housing into these commercial industrial areas. And I mean, that's really been the biggest demand that there is. But you're right, it's more fill than replacement. And maybe that's simply that the existing structures are generally not conducive to that type of use. I mean, I think the mills would be probably the best adaptable architecture to convert into residential, and they're off the table at this
Yeah,
point.
because they're an industrial.
They're industrial, and we have not extended we simply haven't extended the Route 129 overlay type into that area, and there's been hesitancy to do so. And yet that's a very, very viable use for that particular type of architecture. So, and it's an in-demand use. But yeah.
Yeah.
So my thought is you want to push development, and that is the exploration of TIFs. use TIFs to help businesses come in and relocate and renovate a building. We haven't seen a TIF at town meeting for probably better than 10 years, if not 15.
So, George, are you suggesting that'd be an entirely new recommended goal?
Well, you just said
Yeah.
about how do you
Yep.
push along
I agreed.
How
do you-
commercial development.
Yep.
You know, if Lisa's got someone that's looking at renovating a building, looking to put $5 million or $10 million into a building to get it fitted out for themselves, and then they're looking at, you know, a big investment, we'll dangle the carrot, just like Lowell dangled the carrot for Kronos when they went into Cross Point. I don't know what the TIF number was, but it was millions and millions of dollars to get them over there.
Yeah, I think at the last meeting, someone suggested the notion of recommending that the town explore like a proactive TIF policy, so that we were prepared with a kind of a pre-agreed upon, rather than having to have the town consider whether they want to grant TIF. So I think we're on the same page. You're suggesting that this master plan basically come out and say it. We need to use TIFs as a strategic leverage.
So I question that because, you know, the entire reason that we've been hearing for promoting the redevelopment of these areas is to increase the tax base. So if what you're saying is we need to give them the taxes back in order to get somebody in there, that doesn't add up.
No,
in
the
terms of meeting
the way
the goal.
TIFs work, okay, is that, and my understanding is, if the building right now is paying $100,000 a year in taxes, and a company comes in and says, I'm putting $5 million into the building, okay, and then right off the bat, their assessed value will go up. Well, they're still going to pay $100,000 in taxes, okay? But if they were to pay the taxes on the full $5 million, and let's say that would be $150,000, so additional $50,000, it's phased in over maybe a 5-year period or a 10-year period. So you're going to get your taxes, you're going to get it back, maybe you're going to back up to the right tax rate in 10 years, but your base tax number is there. Now what you've done is you brought people into town, you filled space. Once space starts to fill up, then your square footage cost starts to go up around those businesses. And then, you know, you hope that because your space is full and your value is going up, your tax base is based on income, or the assessed value is based on income of the building. So you would hope that the values of those buildings would go up. So, you know, maybe I think I'm hitting it correctly. Lisa could probably tell me, or Evan, but you know, the bottom line is you're attracting someone into a building to invest. And the buildings that we had up on Apollo Drive were first generation buildings. They were designed for single use tenants. They're hard to split up. You know, a lot of these buildings, you know, need to be split up to get multiple tenants in it. And it's hard to split them, and it's going to cost a lot of money. So that's just my take on it.
That's pretty much it, George. That's a great summary. So basically a tax incentive, I've done about 7 or 8 agreements previously. And what it does is essentially it's a delay on collecting taxes on the increased added value due to capital improvements. So capital improvements meaning something, you know, not aesthetic, but we're talking about permanence to the building. And there's other additional layers for job creation, not temporary jobs, not part-time jobs, but permanent job creation, jobs with benefits. And there's many layers from the local level, the state level. Businesses can choose just to work at the local level and not use the added job creation for different reasons. But there are many different aspects to the tax increment financing is what a TIF is. But basically, you're just gaining more tax revenue. You're continuing to collect on the baseline value, whether they're empty or full buildings. And then you're just delaying through a process of negotiation. It's between 5 years and 20 years. and you can negotiate between 5% and 100%. So normally the town will present what they feel is fair based on the value and the jobs, and then you reach an agreement, and documentation, ensues. But that's pretty much how it works. You can use it for commercial properties or industrial properties. Manufacturing has a different aspect to it. And we could also start looking at considering abandoned building tax incentive as well, but that is coordinated with the TIF.
So the last one I think that we did was for that concierge company. And it was tied to them employing, I think, a couple hundred people in the building. So not only you bringing those people into town, you would hope afterwards they shop in the stores in town, they go out for lunch somewhere in town. So, you buy lunch in town, we get 0.75% on the meals tax. So,
A lot of trickle down economics that happen.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I think trying to create, Evan, you talked about how do we move along redevelopment, and I think that's one tool that we could have to help do that. And I don't see it anywhere in this plan. I think we talked about it in 2010, but it's a tool.
There's also a STA, special tax assessment is typically used. It could be used something for 197 Bill Ricker Road, where it's a raw piece of land. And that tax incentive is negotiated by the value of the land and the new construction. So that's a different aspect. TIF is usually a renovation or an improvement for capital investment, or an STA is a tax agreement based on improvements to a raw piece of land. It would be a great tool to incentivize something to happen at that property.
So I think it's a bullet point, and that kind of goes along what we're going here, but I like to hear from the other board members, I guess. So, anybody?
Well, I personally am not a big fan of TIFs, but I realize that's probably a splinter opinion. So,
Joe?
I'm not a big fan of TIFs either, but I can see that there would be a lot of advantages to having a policy and guidelines about how to put them together and offer them in terms of some sort of standard guidance.
Joe, Scott, and Bill?
So, yeah, it's Murphy. So I have a fundamental philosophical objection to things like this. But if they're allowed and we don't take advantage of it, then we could put ourselves at a serious competitive disadvantage. So, I mean, to me, I think that areas should set their tax rate and everybody should pay the same thing no matter what. And these favors for people, I think it's a form of corruption. And so legal corruption. And so, but, as Lowell used it to steal Kronos, if we don't do it, we could be hurt very badly.
Okay. Scott?
I think a bullet to the effect of to Nancy's suggestion about a policy would be to, evaluate developing a policy for TIFs if it can prove beneficial to the community and spur development/redevelopment.
I think that was pretty good wording right there, Scott.
Well, don't ask me to repeat it.
I got that recorded.
Okay, Joe, are you still there? Okay, maybe Joe's not there.
No, I don't.
Um, So, Evan, will you put that together on a bullet point and then send it out to us? Well, now on the next go around, we'll look at it and we'll beat it up some more. Explore the establishment of a mixed-use redevelopment district along 110 from Westwood Line, Hunt Road, Chamberlain Road. Promote mixed-use redevelopment project from Chelmsford Street, Route 110 from the town center to the town center side of Fletcher Street. 110 along the Technology Drive and the mill complexes of North Chelmsford Mill Reuse Overlay. Anybody on that one? Just leave it alone.
Done.
Okay. Formally study tax classification every 3 years as a means to determine a proper balance in terms of tax rate, tax burden. Board of Selectmen voted to split the tax rate in 2018. They do review the tax classification every year, but they don't do a formal study every year. So, I would leave that.
Yeah, it's an ongoing recommendation.
Work with the Greater Lowell Workforce Investment Board to focus on the employment needs of those manufacturing industries with sophisticated technology in the areas of nanotechnology, robotics, sensors, biometrics, electro-optics, lasers, and clean energy. It's ongoing.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Lisa, but I believe this is kind of in her wheelhouse at this point.
Yeah.
So this aligns, I feel, I mean, I haven't done this work in this area yet, in this Chelmsford area yet, but I've been offering workforce training funds to all of these industries. There hasn't been any interest or need, but I certainly feel that it's very important. And, you know, I've been keeping it in my toolbox when, engaging. So yes, this is definitely ongoing, and I don't really have any other comments to add.
So we'll keep it in there.
All right. Expand the public-private partnership initiated by the CEDC by working with private sector to fill vacant commercial space and redevelop industrial properties. Through utilization of the site finder database, the town can provide updated property information for prospective tenants and businesses. Ongoing.
Yeah, Lisa does this.
Yeah. Develop strategies to increase the capacity of the sewer and water systems to meet the growing demands of business community and local residents. Renegotiate the contract with Lowell Regional Wastewater Utility and/or develop an agreement with the town of Billerica to increase sewer capacity for the future. Work with NEMCOG and other communities in the region to address infrastructure issues with the impact future economic development initiatives. See narrative for detail.
Well, that's timely.
So, should there be another note in here for the town to examine other opportunities for a treatment plant or creation of a treatment plant? Or is that?
I would reference, the chapter references the $150,000 study that town meeting is going to be voting on next week. A portion of that study is to investigate a town-owned treatment plant, likely at Southwell. So I'm not sure you want the master plan to recommend pursuing a treatment plant. I think you support the study of it, which is what the town meeting will be voting on next week.
So they're going to be studying for all opportunities or just?
All opportunities.
Okay.
All opportunities, one of which would be a town-owned treatment plant.
I think the first line, develop strategies to increase the capacity of the sewer and water systems.
Agreed.
Growing demands. So
I think that covers it, yep.
Okay. direct CEDC to host regular sessions for residents and business owners in Center Village, Vinyl Square Division of town centers, to educate them on what other communities have done to revitalize the town centers, explore funding opportunities under the Business Improvement District, district improvement financing, community development action grants, community development block grants, programs in order to assist the revitalization of the town centers. Evans ongoing via the Center Village and North Village Master Plan committees.
Yeah, so that comment really pertains to the first sentence. I think these two sentences should probably be separated. After the second bullet should probably be explore funding opportunities. But meeting with the owners and businesses in the two villages has been done, continues to be done. Lisa adds another more proactive layer to that. And then like I said, the explore funding should likely be its own bullet. Business improvement districts, it's mentioned in the 2010 master plan, explains what it is. I'm not sure there's been any consideration or discussion to move that concept forward. If we were to do it, 129 would likely be a logical location, but we're, as Lisa can attest to, we're many steps away, if not years away, from serious consideration of a bid. Same with the diff. I have no idea what community development action grants are at this point. Community development block grants, we are a non-entitlement community, meaning we're essentially not a gateway city. The town has not applied for a non-entitlement community development block grant. Those are very, very competitive. I would like to see us apply for one of those, but they are very, very competitive.
Okay, so we're going to break.
I think we should
off.
break it up. Yeah, we can work with NIMCOG to break that up.
So from explore on's a separate bullet point.
Yeah.
Okay. Next bullet, working with the CEDC, the Chelmsford Business Association, Greater Lowell Chamber of Commerce, the town should develop a survey for its residents, employees at local businesses to assess what the commercial needs are for the community. CEDC and the Community Development Director could then work with Mass Development and Mass Alliance for Economic Development to identify specific businesses that would address these needs.
So I got a little lazy. Ongoing is really, I think Lisa needs to just reword this based upon her realities. We've done surveys through the EDC and NIMCOG. My guess is Lisa will continue to do certain surveys. So I just think it needs to be reworded.
Okay. Next bullet, focus on the extensive redevelopment mixed-use opportunities in Center Village, Chelmsford Street area. The area between Center Village and I-495 should be the focus of redevelopment activities, while mixed-use development should be targeted for the area of the Center Village and Center Village of Fletcher Street, completed via CIOD and CVOD. So take that out.
Maybe continue to focus on or continue to encourage redevelopment, via the CEIOD and Center Village Overlay District.
Okay. Next bullet is encourage industrial development in the Route 129 technology corridor through the redevelopment of existing buildings and zoning changes related to the maximum building height, commercial support service such as cleaners, financial businesses, daycare support, extended stay and conference facilities and restaurants. Utilize expedited permitting procedures for economic development projects in this area. That one's, I would just leave it alone. It's
been completed. I think we need to continue to work on implementation. But the zoning's in place.
So, okay.
So I can work with Lisa to reword that.
Okay. Implement recommendations in Drumhill study conducted by NEMCOG in 2008 to address traffic design guidelines and streetscape issues. Ongoing, several sidewalk streetscape improvement projects have been completed in cooperation with UMass Lowell and develop a redevelopment master plan for the UMass Lowell West Campus. That's been completed. Identified development opportunities related to Glenview Sand and Gravel. Completed via proper closing. No redevelopment plans have been identified. Implement development and redevelopment opportunities at 10 Technology Drive, ongoing. Gene Ave and Wesley Street, completed by redevelopment. So that just needs to be cleaned up. Support the extension of commuter rail, Lowell, Nashville, Manchester. We addressed that already. Address zoning and land use conflicts in Route 3, Route 40 interchange areas so to encourage balance between industrial development, commercial redevelopment, and housing initiatives. Utilize transitional zoning as a means to reduce these conflicts to protect residential neighborhoods adjacent to this corridor. If it failed the town meeting, I would just take this out. But that's
Yeah, I
me.
mean, we're in economic development section, so I would agree.
Explore the establishment mixed use redevelopment district along 110 from Westwood. I already did that one, didn't I?
Yeah, so this would be like continue to implement.
Yeah.
Next one, build upon the redevelopment opportunities at Chelmsford Street, Route 110, Route 3, shopping district, principally through the Stop and Shop project, former Chelmsford Cinema site, Chapter 43D site, 29 Katrina Road. These development projects attract additional private investment, rezone the pad sites in front of Chelmsford Mall as neighboring commercial type uses in order to provide additional buffering and screening for abutters and to protect neighborhood character. So, the Stop and Shop's been redeveloped. Katrina Road's been sold, right? Bus area. So the only thing that hasn't been done is rezone the pad sites in front of Chelmsford Mall as neighborhood commercial type uses in order to provide additional buffering screening for abutters to protect neighborhood character. Right?
Yeah, and even that, while that's very specific, with the COID in place, I don't think you need to actually do rezoning to create pad sites. And as the board members recall, several years ago, the property owner actually did apply to the planning board to create several pad sites. While it was not well received by the neighborhood, the applicant, the property owner, actually withdrew. And upon speaking to the property owner, he did not withdraw due to neighborhood opposition. This public hearing didn't really get started. He withdrew because he had existing leases, primarily with Kohl's, and they were unwilling to modify their view shed provisions.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting example as to how nothing to do with town and government and special permits, just how the real estate market sometimes is its own worst enemy. So, Mr. Carey continues to own that property. We'll see what his plans are moving forward. And as we've discussed at length in these committee meetings, retail is changing drastically. So I'm not sure the original vision of pad sites there makes a lot of sense moving forward.
So should it be something that the planning board looks into, or
So
take it out altogether?
my suggestion is that there should be a new bullet that talks about the Route 3 highway interchange study, and that the town should, upon its conclusion, should consider consider appropriate modifications. So that would take care of Drum Hill, Route 110, and Route 40.
Okay. So will you word that up?
Yes.
Okay. And the last one is prioritize potential economic development sites for the CEDC and the Community Development Department to implement. Okay, I don't know.
Yeah.
The potential economic development sites are, Jay from NIMCOG is going to be presenting those to you at your next meeting.
Okay,
As you recall, there's a long list in the 2010 master plan. So this bullet refers to the updated list of priority economic development sites. Most of those are already located within commercial industrial zoning districts and therefore within the overlays. So it shouldn't be surprising or problematic.
okay. And that's all I got.
Any new ones? I know it's a late hour, but has anyone thought of any new economic development recommendations?
How about,
Go ahead. What'd you say, Nancy?
I said, how about evaluate revision of the marijuana ban for non-retail industrial applications? In other words, allow industrial
Yeah, you allow grow facilities, storage facilities for labs, testing labs.
in the IAs. I mean, they're secure facilities. They do
I have-
not touch the
I have
neighborhoods.
no problem with that recommendation.
I think that's a good one.
And
Because
they're
I think we're missing
they're a
some
business.
opportunities.
Scott and Bill?
Yep, agree.
I'm hesitant, but certainly evaluate it.
Okay. Evan, you want to create that bullet point?
Yes.
I honestly don't know if you could get it through town meeting. It would depend on the Board of Health.
You know,
But, you know,
it has its place within economic development, particularly if the town is going to continue to have 500,000 plus square feet of 129 vacant space.
that's right.
At least it's another market option. And as Nancy, as you're suggesting, it would be an entirely interior operation. You wouldn't even know if you were driving by. And maybe the town gets some additional financial benefit via host agreement. So
It's an economic opportunity.
it's a reasonable recommendation.
Okay. I think we're all in agreement on that one. What about, Lisa, maybe you can answer this. I know that UMass Lowell has a facility on, I think, Dutton Street, where they have like incubator or a little startup companies. Is there any recommendation of working with the university and Middlesex Community College or university on some of these startups to when they need to transition from that to the town?
So I've reached out to them several times. I've had multiple conversations, and I think where the barrier comes in is that of the empty space that Evan's talking about, it really comes down to 5 buildings that are massive, and none of them are suitable for multi-tenanting. So our property owners need to see the value in spending money to fit up some of those buildings for tenancy. Any of our locations that have increments of 20,000, 30,000 square feet, they're full. And those sized buildings, the medium-sized businesses, would really gladly locate in the crossroads. So I've talked with the college as a way to connect with that entrepreneurial offshoots, and it comes down to that barrier where our empty space is not easily suited for some of that use. Maybe if we start talking about a tax incentive, if that is something that has any interest to help these property owners. A lot of the buildings are 100,000 square feet, 80,000 square feet. They're all single built for single tenants. But our one co-working space that we have called Office Links, they're at 321 Bill Ricker Road. They are half full. And so COVID kind of skews what the effects will be for some of that shared space. But there certainly is interest and there is demand. We need more cooperation from the property owners to make that space more appealing for smaller, mid-sized users. I don't know if Evan has any other comments to add in.
Yeah, George, I think you're specifically referring to the M2D incubator.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think what we've done, and Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our current Route 129 website, we list them as a resource. And I think our play at this point is that when tech companies are locating to Chelmsford or thinking about locating to Chelmsford, we inform them that U Lowell has labs where they lease very expensive equipment, lab equipment.
Right.
So the proximity of 129 to U Lowell is a selling point. That's currently kind of our sales pitch that we've wrapped into our branding and marketing.
Okay.
But we don't, as Lisa's mentioning, we don't really have a direct, strong relationship with the university and their labs. Our conversations have been, we'll mutually market.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there was an opportunity there, that's all.
Is there any opportunity in the makerspace? I know Lowell's has a number of locations at this point that are being very heavily used.
I think that's where a grant would come in. If the town could figure out a strategic way of applying for a state grant in cooperation with a private property owner that was interested in creating a makerspace business incubator, I know whether it was food themed or what have you, that would be our play. So, that could be a new recommendation where the land use and zoning section talks about trying to zone for those new kind of uses. I think that'd be a complementary recommendation with an economic development.
I think that would be a valid recommendation. I don't know whether I would stick my neck out and refer to food in it because Chelmsford is not really amenable to food processing.
We are, Lisa is working on that. It is a slow slog. But
then
we
should
know
actually state something here.
we know there's demand.
There is demand.
Yes. So we may have an angle that, what's the name of the catering company, Lisa?
Bianco
Yes.
Catering.
So Lisa and I have been brainstorming that Bianco may be a way to,
Open the door.
yes, we're going to have that conversation with them.
Good luck.
Yep.
Yeah, just good luck. But it's an opportunity, and we're in a location because we are a highway crossroads, and transportation from here is really simple into a lot of areas of demand. That would be a very viable business in our community.
Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile recommendation. I just don't know enough about what kind of makerspace would work in Chelmsford.
I don't know.
But it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll work on that. So that covers it for tonight. I think our next meeting with NIMCOG is October 29th.
Okay. So, Evan, I'll send you over the notes that I took, that I was typing as we were going.
Yep.
You can compare them with your notes. And then we'll get those to Beverly and Jay. We work on some edits that we talked about. And that way we can kind of stay on this theme and get these sections done.
Yeah, I think by the 29th, I think we'll have a pretty close to a final draft, land use, zoning, and economic development.
Yeah, and then I think the work that Gary's done is fantastic on facilities. So I would encourage everybody to read that section. Any comments or questions, get them over to Evan and he'll get them to Gary, and Gary will have those answers for us next time we meet with him. Okay? We don't have any minutes, but we got to get to Vivian and get caught up a little bit. And if she can't do it, we'll have to figure out what to do.
Yeah, I know she just submitted a set of Conservation Commission minutes, so I think she's getting back on track. She is very, very backlogged. Board of Selectmen, this committee, a couple others.
Yeah.
That's the primary reason why the meetings have been recorded.
Okay. With that, does anyone else have anything?
Nothing.
How about a motion to adjourn?
I have a motion by Mike to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Nancy. Vote, Mike? Yay or nay?
Yay.
Nancy?
Aye.
Bill?
Yep.
Scott?
Aye.
Me as aye.
Good night, all.
Unanimous.
Have a great night.
Have a
Thanks,
good night.
Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
All right, stay
Thanks,
safe and
Evan.
healthy.